In Lakesh and Veritas, everyone, sending you the frequencies of oneness and truth. You are now tuning into Of the Sun's SUNCAST, a weekly podcast bringing you elevated topics focused on expanding ourselves and humanity into becoming the truth, moving into oneness. So we're coming live all the way from the frequency of one mind. We have LaOta of the Sun, the architect of this vibrant organism who provides of the Sunners wisdom and guidance so they can find the truth and be free. I am Tavares of the Sun, certified instructor and practitioner of the Sun modalities, and creative director behind Of the Sun's artwork, programs, and sessions. And we have Jessica of the Sun, author of 50 Women Anthology and advocate for Of the Sun, currently learning the teachings. So greetings and in Lakesh and Veritas.
In Lakesh and Veritas.
In Lakesh and Veritas.
So glad to be here today. This is a wonderful topic that we have. In Lakesh and Veritas, Jessica.
In Lakesh and Veritas.
Jessica is coming to us from Germany. And so sometimes there's a little delay.
It's my agreeable ancestors all wanting to talk at once because yeah, they're a rowdy bunch. I must add, I am in the land of my ancestors, so there's also an ancestral component to me coming to Germany. It's exciting.
Well, it's wonderful to have you and your ancestors here with us, and we'd like to start the show with Calling for Truth. So we encourage everyone to join with us and call for the truth. Call for us to see the truth in our landscapes, in each other, to hear the truth on our social media, our radios, and on television, and to be able to speak the truth as we have never been able to before, to recognize what is true and be able to say it. Shall we together call for the frequency of truth to come into our lives and stand before us so that all may really see the truth, which is based on the actual facts. So I'm so happy to be here with us today. We're talking about negative motivators, which are the things that prompt us or that we think we need to do other things, to accomplish other tasks, but we're really being motivated by something that's not in our favor and that does not uplift and support us at the highest possible vibration. And much of these kinds of thoughts come in from previous lifetimes, from this lifetime, from our cultural understandings, from our lineage, from our ancestry, from the generations who've come before us. And there's so many different areas where this impacts our life and we're not always aware of it. So both of you have a list of some negative motivators. What would you like to talk about today?
God. I'd like to share that this idea of the negative motivators, it has been monumental in the shift and changes that have taken place in my life with self-work, or soul work, and becoming aware of these and also having the tools that are necessary to properly transform them into something higher, change the trajectory, reprogram ourselves. I mean, it's been a game changer. And this is we've spoken about negative motivators a lot, sprinkled throughout the podcast. And this idea of negative motivators, it is within the advanced soul clearing process. So the very first soul clearing, this is addressed. Again, to help us move through, like LaOta was sharing, lifetimes. I mean, these things are coming in from so many places. Our ancestry, so there's more than one cause. And with that being said, let's talk about fear. Because everyone has fear.
Yes. Yes, it's quite true. When we go in to do work, spiritual work and soul work on someone, it's very clear that all of humanity is inundated with levels of fear from many, many places. It is the fear that protects us when our mothers say, don't run into the street, hold my hand, stand next to me, be with me, don't run off. Or if you were in another lifetime where there was war and they're like, don't let them see you. I make sure you hide. Remember to be afraid. Don't let them see you. And so our grandmothers, our mothers, their mothers, and the mothers before them, all of them instilled fear to protect us. It was not done in as a negative in that situation. It was done to protect us and help us exist in that lifetime and in this lifetime. However, that's not the only way that fear comes in, but that is one way for us to understand why we're born afraid and why it only increases when we listen to television and see the movies and listen to the radio and the news. There is always the news. That's a little scary.
Very scary.
However, those are just some of the many ways. So what did you have in mind? How do you want to, this is a broad topic.
I know. I'll respond to what you were sharing, because as you were speaking on that, there's so many examples that came to mind of this playing out in real time. And I thought, man, how many people are experiencing this? And if you are, comment, share this on the page. So I was thinking of my mother and my grandmother and their fear of flying. And I'm not sure what happened to them in their experience. However, as LaOta mentioned, there's an idea of survival, because the fear it plays out in that area of life. So I recall, I'm thinking of going to Japan, and you don't want to fly. What if the plane might fall out the sky? What if your plane gets lost? I wouldn't do that if I was you. And, being able to identify, whoa, that's coming from a place of fear. What shook Randy? And these type of things are not only passed down when we're children and it's instilled in us, but of course it's in the DNA. So this has been something personally having to confront, because I've noticed when she speaks on the fear, it somehow targets something inside.
Yes.
And and then we become questionable and into doubt.
So this is a good time to talk about the fact that the DNA is living, that the DNA is alive generationally from our siblings, from our relatives, from our ancestors, from our parents, and what they have strong motivations for, we have that tendency towards that strong motivation. So if they have an intense fear, rational or otherwise, which is almost always irrational, if they have an intense fear, then you may find that you're fearful, but you have no reason to be fearful. No history, there's no experience that made you fearful. You're just fearful because your mother was fearful, or you're fearful because your sister's fearful, or your grandmother was fearful. And in your case, your grandmother's fearful, so now your mother's fearful. And you do get on airplanes? Or?
Yes, I do. Several. I broke through.
You broke through. Okay. And that's a wonderful thing, but it's quite true that the DNA is living, it's active, and it does pull us towards the intense emotion, positive or negative. So if the intense fear, which is always, I want to point out, is always something in the future. The fear is never about someone standing in front of you about to kill you right now. The fear is always, they might do it later. The plane might fall out of the sky. Something mysterious may happen down the road. There may be something lurking in the shadows next week. If I don't, it's like insurance. Insurance is based on fear.
Yes.
I will bet something bad is going to happen. So I'm going to put money down to make sure that when the bad thing I'm expecting to happen happens, I'm good. So this is the
sounds neurotic, by the way.
This is humanity.
Yes.
And it's mandatory in many states. If you're not afraid and buy your insurance, you can be in trouble legally, because that is so the understanding of the way in which humanity operates right now. So Jessica, do you have anything on this?
Oh, absolutely. I do remember my first experience with Tavares whenever I was doing my very first soul clearing. I recalled this a couple of times, but I'm gonna recall it again, because I had never heard of negative motivators. To me, these were like things that I had no clue what they were. But I had observed several patterns playing out in my life constantly, like abuse patterns or self-sabotage patterns, or like self-blame or guilt patterns, and things that were coming up over and over again in relationships, professional situations. And these are like friendships and romantic relationships as well. And I started to wonder, like, why do these same patterns keep happening despite me, like, following law of attraction and following all of these new belief patterns and things like that. So that's whenever I went to Tavares about the advanced soul clearing and booked that. And I remember through a recommendation of a friend, and the first meeting I had with him, he just bing, 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 identified like 3 or 4 major negative motivators that were showing up consistently in my life. And for the record, folks, Tavares did not know me. He didn't have any information about me before. This was not Miss Cleo scam. This was not somebody researching me and then coming to me and telling me things. Tavares did not know me, and like just told me everything that was going wrong in my life. And it was so awe-inspiring to hear that. And I just thought, wow. And that's when I first learned what a negative motivator was. And since then, I have been able to pick them out. And there were many, many. I think a lot of us don't have 1 or 2 negative motivators. In a way, they're kind of like a Venn diagram. They're kind of like interwoven into each other, and they overlap with each other in different areas. And they create these patterns, these like looped patterns that I would say negative motivators are the basis for looped patterns, because if you want to clear looped patterns, you've got to go to the root cause, which is going to be the negative motivator. And if you go to that root cause and you trace it upward, you can really see what's causing these patterns. Why are certain people treating me the way they're treating me? Why are all of my situations going in one direction or another? There's usually the root cause, and that's some kind of negative motivator is at work. And it is a lot of clearing work to get them straight. But I recommend to everybody, the sooner you figured out what your negative motivators are, the better off you will be. Like your life will thrive once you know how to work with them and identify them, clear them. And it takes practice and it takes time. It's not something you do one session, you're cured, it's over. No, it is a consistent practice of recognizing them as they come up, using the practices and protocol of the sun to keep them away from you and clear them. And then also keep them from turning into patterns again, because you can always, it's kind of like addiction patterns. You can always spiral back into the same patterns you were once in if you're not watching yourself, if you're not careful, and you're not doing your practices. So it is a constant effort to clear them. So I do want to emphasize that, because there is no such thing as you take a pill and you're cured. I mean, you can do that if you want, but the negative motivator is still going to be there at the end of the
day. And then you'll have the pill addiction. So everything you said is absolutely correct. The idea of self-sabotage is tied to fear. The loop patterns are patterns not only from this lifetime, but loop patterns you've been in lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, where you're, of course, having relationships with other people you were in loop patterns with that are where you sabotage yourself. All of this is based on fear. All of it comes to us through the process of fear, and almost everything in our world is designed that way. Just as I mentioned, the idea of insurance, our world buys into the idea that something's going to be wrong, and that's a negative motivator in and of itself. One easy thing for us to do is to see how everything is right. When every situation that happens to us, that we look for what is right in the situation. How is it right that, the mail came the way it came today? How is it right that someone came to my house? How is it right that I got the phone call? How is it right that I had to move out of state? How is it right? What are the things that make it right? When we're only looking at how a thing is wrong, then of course we can see, we can have an illusion or a delusion about, oh, it could really be wrong, or it could even be more wrong, or it could be wrong double. We could quadruple the amount of wrong. I could think of all terrible things for the next 3 years to make wrong out of this one situation. The mailman's a lunatic, they drove crazy, they're going to do this, all of these kind of insane ideas. All of that is fear out of control. And the loop pattern is the deep groove or imprint that humanity and individually, all of us are in from the beginning of being in fear. And to break free of the fear, well, if we look at it as if fear is a trap, so if we look at it like there's a trap that we could walk into accidentally, and that would take us off balance and make us lose, that's what fear looks like. We don't have to be afraid. We could choose to see every circumstance the most right thing in it so that our manifestation capabilities were working in our favor. But every time something happens and we think, oh, I'm going to lose, or I'm not going to have a friend, or I'm going to have to do something, or I'm going to have to pay money. Every time we look at things like that, we start manifesting all the complications surrounding that idea. It's the trap. It's like being tricked and trapped by your cable company. It's like the idea is that you're looking at a situation, you trip and fall into the trap. And then you can't get out of the trap because all you can see are the sides of the walls, instead of being able to see where you should be in the scenario, where you should be in the equation, which is that you love yourself, you are correct and right, and all correct, right things happen to you. So even if it appears to be something else, that's not what it is, because you have the power to manifest all rightness in your experience. You don't have to manifest wrong. You don't have to have the reason to buy the insurance. You can decide that life will be good and you don't need insurance. Now, this is metaphorically. I'm not saying, don't buy your car insurance. I'm saying metaphorically, don't decide that everything will be wrong. Decide that every circumstance presents you with opportunities that would be wonderful for you to step into, and all of them will make you greater, richer, better, more expansive, instead of thinking that if you lose, you'll lose something and then you'll become less than. That's the loop pattern that people stay in relationships. People put up with things they shouldn't put up with because they feel like they will lose. They'll lose money, or they'll lose status, or they'll lose some desire they have, when they're the ones who made the whole thing happen. And so they lose sight of the fact that whatever you think you're going to lose, you already made it. Make it again. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic.
To your point on that,
we're going to come back shortly with some more talk about fear.
Most definitely. Stay tuned. In La
Stay
Veritas.
tuned. In La Veritas.
Do you find yourself struggling with looped patterns of fear, guilt, and appeasement? These destructive patterns are called negative motivators. And, however, there is a solution. If you are looking to transmute and rise above these loop patterns, the solution is Advanced Soul Clearing 1 with Of the Sun.
Thank you for that introduction, Tavares.
You're welcome. The pleasure was all mine. Okay, so welcome back, folks. And we are talking about negative motivators. And as you heard in our mock commercial, we have the solution for that. And however, but we're going to pick up on fear, because we left off in LaOta. She shared so many different principles that were a part of this. And this idea of, I'm going to take it back to In Lakesh, the idea of being able to see yourself in everything. And especially when you know what to look for, like, okay, I know fear is my negative motivator. Where's the fear? Usually when these negative motivators are brought up, the person can list at least 3 things that they're fearful of. And I'm sure some of you listening feel the same way. So once they're aware of that, then they can go through their experience looking through the lenses of In Lakesh to see the fear that is playing out at all various levels of their experience. So again, I think it sounds very practical. It's very real what people are going through, and how this stops and hinders us from that forward motion of essentially freedom. I know there was an example that you gave of one of many regarding fear of leaving the job because of the pay. And you didn't expound on this idea, but usually people who find themselves in that situation, they're morally compromised and they know it's not right, but the fear of, what if I'm not going to make the same money, or what if I can't, so then they're stuck. So we can see that these are things, these negative motivators specifically, are truly permeating every experience and are at the base of the experience. And if they're rectified, then we can definitely have that forward motion, or break that pattern.
I'm so pleased that you just said this idea that they're morally compromised, because inside of the fear always is this option to go with the thing that is not morally correct. It's not morally correct to let someone hurt you. It's not morally correct to put yourself in a position of being abused. It's not morally correct for you to do things for money. All of these different things, but the fear is the motivator. The fear that you're going to lose, the fear that you're not going to have, all of these various fears are the thing that make you compromise the moral structure that is the life force that will protect you. The very thing that protects you, which is your morals, your boundaries, the things that you're willing to do and unwilling to do, those are the things that are eroded through the fear. And it's in everything. The idea of fear is the basis of everything in our world, because so many things in our world are tied to compensation, and to actual money and things that represent money. And to break free of that means that we then have to rely upon our own moral fortitude, which is always in jeopardy if we don't realize that there's always another option. We don't have to lose. We can think the best of our situation instead of being consumed by fear and then be afraid to move. It is still courage and action forward that is the hallmark of those who are growing.
As you were speaking, something came up from prior to the break. Again, speaking on the principles and the reality of, like, life is always pushing us to grow. It's literally helping us, and there's a misunderstanding amongst mass consciousness, especially when we're operating in fear. We're thinking, hey, there's no way out. There's no options. I'm stuck. But the reality is that life itself is attempting to propel us out of whatever negative situation through us facing the negative motivator in this case.
Absolutely. The universe is constantly trying to give us more, reward us, elevate us, help us grow, make us stronger. It is our own loop patterns, our own constructs that make us think we're going to lose instead of move forward. Fear, the basis of fear is the fear of the unknown. And of course, what we don't know is what we don't know. But this predisposition to deciding that I'm not going to evolve, I'm not going to move forward because I don't know, is the opposite of what it should be. It should be that we run into the new, into what is unknown so that we can grow and evolve, instead of feeling terrified. And it's like someone 90 years old who's terrified to leave the house. Like, we're all terrified to leave what we know, and we don't know what we like. We only know that we like what we know. We don't know what we don't like. And we don't know what we do like. We just know we like what we know. And we don't want to leave the safety of what we know, because then we feel like we are justified in being afraid. And then we start to subtract from ourselves all the goodness of the universe. And then it starts to erode the very foundation of our moral fiber. And we end up doing things, compromising ourselves for money or for pretend affection.
As you say that, it becomes very clear how destructive fear can be in one's life. is I just see it a continuing tearing away. And as you were speaking on fear of what we don't know, and how, okay, I like the whole equation thing, fear and then plus what we don't know equals destruction. So like
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, this equation thing is rocking right now. And it makes
Wait,
sense.
say that again. I'm gonna get that documented. Hey,
Fear plus the unknown equals destruction.
Yes.
And this idea, if we fear what we don't know, and what we don't know, we will destroy that thing.
Yes.
Because of the fear that we have, and it's like we destroy the potential possibilities of positive trajectories we could step into because of the fear.
And it plays out. We have factual evidence of that with how humans have treated the planet.
Yes.
We don't understand nature. We don't know the animals. We fear them because we don't know them. So then we destroy them. And then all a possibility of joining together in the oneness of the elevation and the expansion that could happen for being one is destroyed because we didn't know, so we killed it. And we're making sure that if anything else comes up that we don't know about, we kill that too.
Yeah.
Like kill it first, think about it later.
Yeah. That makes me think about when an insect comes in someone's house, kill it first. Think about it later.
And that is not a right or exact thing to do, Tavares.
I understand. That's why I'm presenting it, giving these examples so we know what not to do.
That is not a correct idea.
We give it in Lakesh, but more so when things come into our house, we recognize that there's information.
Yes.
There is something that it has to share with us, because if it didn't, it wouldn't be there.
Right. It's not that everything just wants to be around human consciousness. It's not even like that.
Oh, true.
It's more like something has happened. And so there may be an opportunity to join with the consciousness of whatever the living thing is, relieve it of its suffering. Sometimes things come into my experience just so I can relieve their suffering. Things will show up beside my bed or show up by my window where I sit, really to get in Lakesh. They're coming in to relieve our suffering, consider us. And so we're happy to do that. And that's a real experience that those who are learning with Of the Sun do have. But you do have something you want to share with us about fear, right? Or some extension. You had an example?
Okay. So let's see. Fear. There's a couple. I'll give an example of. Okay, now I'm juggling them around. I'm like, I don't know if I should share that one, because it's actually a different negative motivator.
Well, it can be whatever you would like to share that makes sense in this.
Okay. All right. So the fear of moving forward. Okay. So I'll give a real life example where personally, I'm not fond of paperwork. I'll set the preface. However, life itself was putting me into more positions where I needed to take care of my paperwork. So there were financial issues or documents that required my attention, let's just say that. And the fear of the outcome of what I thought I wouldn't have, it continued to create this procrastination within my experience, where it got further and further to where I almost missed the deadline, and this would have wrecked me. However, this experience, what I was seeing through it is that, one, again, based off of the principles, and this is one of the real things that penetrates the deepest for me, and for listeners, I encourage you to reach for the principles that are shared through LaOta, Jessica, and myself, because it's the principles that are multidimensional, ever permeate within every experience. So again, the idea of fear of filling out these documents, and life was bringing this to me full front, in full effect. And I was saying how if I didn't address this, basically it would be a big financial loss for me. And the deeper level of fear regarding finances and things of that nature, that was coming to the surface. And I had to look at it, I had to address it and really see, look at what this fear is doing. Because I have not acknowledged the fear, it is, my actions are destructive because I'm sabotaging myself into a position where this could be a financial setback if I don't merely follow through on what I need to. So again, acknowledging that fear, and I started using the tools, going back to the basics, 101, clearing the fear out of me, sending it to the mass clearing, doing Ho'oponopono. I mean, there's a myriad of different things. However, let's just say the outcome of that was successful. But I can see that if I would have allowed the fear to consume me, again, it would have been a major financial setback, and there would have been no one to blame but myself. Because again, responsibility and accountability. But also on the flip side, because of the principles of life, it's always wanting us to grow. That was a moment of growth for me, to break through with dealing with certain financial situations that were unknown to me. And, it made me greater right now. So that's my story about fear.
I think this is really important because the idea of procrastination can only lead to stagnation. There is anything that you're waiting for is fear. Yeah. Anything that you're not moving out on, any decision you're not making is always because of fear, because the truth comes quickly and then we ignore it and throw it out the window and then we're stuck and we're not sure. But in the higher elevations, the option is always there. There's always an option, maybe not clearly defined. You may have to step forward to see the option, but it's always there. Any level of resistance and procrastination always leads to stagnation. Stagnation leads to extinction. There is no other way to look at it.
Yes.
These constructs that are in our society, like financial things, credit card things, paperwork things, this is the world we live in. So it would be delusional and illusional to think that they don't exist for us, but they exist for everybody else. Yeah. That I can live without it. You limit yourself, your ability to be mobilized, because these are the structures of the world that we live in. So rather than trying to restructure the universe according to your resistance of not wanting to do something, maybe having the courage to step forward will give you the necessary buoyancy to win in whatever your experience is. So I love that example, because we all have had a moment where we don't feel like filling out something. Mm-hmm. I'm feeling that way about reviews. So Jessica, you have something?
Oh gosh, yes. I think fear is a funny thing because it can overtake you in a lot of different ways. And sometimes it actually shows up disguised as something else when it's actually fear, right? Like pride, for example, is fear at the basis. If you know people who are very egotistical or prideful of themselves, I mean, what that is there's an underlying insecurity or fear of failure, of criticism, of being less than. And it's I think that of all the negative motivators, that one's a really tricky one because it can masquerade. And goodness, how many fear stories do I have? I think fear feeds into self-sabotage too. Because we may fear a certain thing happening, we will sabotage it inadvertently. We will sabotage it for ourselves so that it won't happen. And then that way we can say and reinforce the fear. We can go back and reinforce it and say, well, you know what? I knew he or she was going to leave me. So, look what happened. It happened when all along we may have sabotaged ourselves to make that happen because we were afraid of it. So
instead of being your psychic.
What did you say?
Because so many people will say, oh yeah, I'm just psychic. I already knew. But then that already knew is putting in all the ingredients that will make it so.
Yeah. Well, and I can give an example from the COVID situation. I remember back in March when I was in the United States, Unfortunately, I was not able to make a trip this year, or this December, like I was planning. But whenever I was going to the States in March, my higher self had told me, "Don't go," and I didn't listen to my higher self. And I felt a tremendous amount of fear, and there was a lot of fear in the airports, fear on the streets of New York City, fear all around me, and I could feel it. But what I had to do was get quiet and get still and say to my higher self, "What are you trying to tell me?" My higher self was telling me, "Get out of New York City faster. You've got to get out faster." And I listened to my higher self. And because I listened to my higher self, I left less than 48 hours before the country went on a total lockdown. And I was able to get back to Germany because I stepped away from the fear and the panic for a moment and asked my higher self, "What are you trying to tell me? I know I'm swimming in fear. I'm swimming in panic. I'm swimming in anxiety. I'm swimming in all these negative motivators. And it's like the whole society is not helping it. The government's freaking people out. The media is freaking people out. But when you feel like you're in a fearful moment, I found the antidote is stepping away and asking your higher self, getting still and just saying, "What are you trying to tell me?" And then you can do, if for some of you who may be more advanced, you can check in with your spiritual committee and ask your spiritual committee yes or no questions to calibrate what it is that you're doing. For those of you who aren't as advanced, I think everybody understands what a higher self is and the concept of that. And the most important thing is to recognize the fear and then get still and then ask yourself, what am I choosing because of this fear? That's an important lesson I think I learned back then.
And it's agreeable to all of us too, this idea that your life is worthy of examination. Your experiences are worthy of examination. If you feel yourself being resistant or being confused, if you feel that you're unclear as to what to do, then you should get quiet wherever you are in your development. Allow yourself to get quiet and examine, where is it coming from? Is it coming in from the lineage? Is it coming in from past lives? Is it coming in because you are being challenged to do something that you're feeling resistance to? And then it grows into a fear that will devour your experience and possibly your paycheck. So all of these things are so important. Not everyone has the skill set, but everyone does need to know that looking at it, if you work with Of the Sun, if you take classes and things, you will learn to calculate your understandings. Until that time, it's good to look at the patterns. And so I often have people make lists of the patterns of their sabotage from high school forward so that they can see that it's them. And then once they see that it's them, they can let go of all the anxiety about someone else trying to get them, when they realize that they keep choosing people who are perfectly enthused about getting them. They keep making choices to have the level of pain that you find necessary. And then once you don't have that, we have the benefit of hearing from people who think that you have to have pain to move forward. So these belief systems also come in feeling like you're not worthy. So now you can't have it because you're not worthy, or feeling like it has to be painful, or feeling that everything is painful, or feeling that the things that you resist because you resist them because you think they're going to be painful. All of this is something that should be examined in every life. Certainly, our lives are worth examining and taking a moment. Everyone is capable of seeing, if they get quiet, where the fear comes from. The most important thing is knowing that there is always another option. So when people think, I have to do this because someone will be angry, they have to realize that there's an option, them being angry and you caring about it, that they're angry.
So this idea of the option, I'm thinking about an individual who, when they're in the fear, when they're being consumed, the thoughts, the emotions are running rampant, and how that fear, it pretty much dilutes any truth that could come in, even when you're asking. And you mentioned it earlier, the truth comes in. How did you
First,
say it?
the very first thought you have, like actually Jessica's saying it, like you have a thought, and if you obey the thought, the higher frequencies, the laws and principles of the universe require discipline. For you to be in accord and be able to elevate with the laws and principles of the universe, there's a level of discipline that's needed. So when you hear the first thought, and the first thought says, don't answer the phone, don't answer it, even though it keeps ringing. If you hear the first thought says, get out of New York, get out of New York. Don't take yourself down that mired path into the mud and the quicksand that, well, I don't want to, because this is what most people do, is they don't want to hear the answer that they hear. Like, yeah. I don't want to leave New York. I like New York. I don't want to leave there. So now they've left the solution behind, and now they're in other territory. So everything else that happens after that goes wrong. Mm-hmm. So if you go back to what was my first thought, I saw this person and I thought lovely thoughts about them, or I saw them and I didn't like them, but I married them anyway. So go back to the first thought and then examine that, because the truth always comes in, but in most people's mind, it comes in so quietly that they don't identify it because it's not aligned with what their illusionary desire is.
Yes. And that was what I was attempting to express, this, they can't even see it.
Right.
And if they hear it, it's super muffled.
It's very low and very indistinguishable. Yeah. And they're not sure. They're like, I think I heard no, but I think I want yes. So we're going to go with yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I feel this is something that we all have experienced or are continuing to experience unless we have a solution. One of the things that I've learned in my journey is the importance of clearing in those moments. When you miss the sound, but we know something's not right. We still know. Everyone knows deep down inside. But what I have found to help me is it's similar to what Jessica is sharing, going into clearing mode, clearing myself of the fear or of interferences in my field, which there's many ways to do so, so that that fear doesn't have to muffle the truth that's coming in, and I can go back and ask for the truth, and I'll get something different this time.
And even without ever taking a class or having a spiritual committee or without having any formal training, you can call for the truth every day, yes, often and repeatedly, until your consciousness is in harmony with you receiving and recognizing the truth as it comes to you. It is wonderful if you take classes and grow beyond it. But should you not be able to, for whatever reason at this moment, you can certainly call for the truth, as we started the show and the way that we will end it today.
Yes.
So we'll show you how that's done.
Okay.
Shall we? All of us together, all of those who are having moments of confusion, shall we all call for the truth? Shall we call to see the truth in ourselves, in our own actions, hear the truth in the voice that's in our own head, and then the voices that are outside of us, our other selves, and speak the truth? Shall we be able to articulate what is real and true in our experience? Shall we all call for the frequency of truth to come forward in our lives and stand in front of us and show us the way? Shall we do this so that all may see, really see the truth? We thank you for participating with us and for calling for truth, and to help you with your negative motivators and with all fear. This is an excellent solution or solution. Thank you. In Lakesh and Veritas.
In Lakesh Veritas.
In Lakesh Veritas.